Welcome back, one and all, to another episode of A to the K's Wrestle Talk podcast. You're here, as always, with the highlight of the night. It's me, Anthony. I'm joined once again by the king of bling bling. It's Carl. Hi, Carl.
A big hello once again, Anthony, and to everyone listening. The first thing you got to realize, brother, is that this right here is the future of podcasts. You can call this the new world order of podcasts, brother. And not only are we going to take over the whole podcast business, we will destroy everything in our path, Anthony.
Yeah. I love it. I love how you slowly got more Hogan-like as it went on as well. It's like
it happens
took over, you know? Fantastic stuff.
I mean, I can feel a dodgy hip coming on. Maybe it could be part of it.
Yeah. And he's slowly going senile. So, Carl, got another fun-filled week of wrestling action for everyone, as I'm sure you know. Obviously, we had the second night of the American Bash, or whatever it was called. All-American Bash? Are we all-American or just American?
All-American? Great.
Are we
great?
Great.
America's
It's great. It was great.
America's great
the
again.
Great American Bash.
Make America Great Again Bash.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had that. We had the second night of Fyter Fest.
We did.
And then the other two, you know.
Yeah.
We had Shiter Fest.
And, even Shiter Fest.
Yeah. So, I mean, a very mixed bag when it comes to this week in wrestling, but we'll get on to that. We also have the Ringside Report, as always, so we'll be giving the updates on any news and rumours or anything that we might have heard about or seen tweets of for this coming week. And then our unique segment for the week, should be a good bit of fun, is combining two of our loves, Carl, really. We love wrestling and we love video games. So, naturally, we're going to talk about the video games, the wrestling video games that we used to love growing up. So we'll call it a top 10, I suppose. But I'll be honest, it's going to be very biased because I had a PlayStation 2. So most of mine are PlayStation 2.
Makes sense.
I know you had a few, Carl. You had the GameCube, so I know there's a couple on there. Did you have the N64?
I did for a time.
I believe there were a couple of good wrestling games on the N64 as well. Not that I ever played them. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that.
But we know what the best ones were.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll kick things off then with the Ringside Report.
Let's do this thing.
Let's do this. So, coming up tonight on the Ringside Report, are WWE selling to Saudi Arabia? Is Tommaso Ciampa unhappy with the WWE? Could we be seeing more of The Undertaker? Did Vince McMahon make a foolish purchase?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Are there concerns over Bruce Pritchard's current position? Is Adam Cole looking to make his leap to the main roster? Will Sonya Deville be competing for a men's title? Is Jeff Hardy stuck in WWE? Who knows? Are AEW actually winning in the ratings war? We'll discuss that. Is Sammy Guevara donating his earnings? Again, an interesting one. Let's find out. Has Rusev tested positive for COVID-19? Yes, he has. Another fantastic one, Carl. Charlotte has revealed a major WWE leak. We'll get on to that one as well. Hey. Is Extreme Rules no longer going to be aired live? And lastly, is Cody going to reveal a bit more about the proposed deal with CM Punk? We're going to discuss all of this and more, all coming up right now, actually. Yeah, right now. So, Carl, would you like to kick us off, or do you want me to do the first one?
I'll let you go first.
Okay.
As is tradition.
So, going first, as mentioned, we had the possibility of WWE selling to Saudi Arabia. So, we've had suggestions that Vince McMahon is looking for a deal with Saudi Arabia. And I say Saudi Arabia generally because I'm not sure who the exact people are. But the suggestions are following on, and you might know a little bit about this, Carl, that UFC was sold in some capacity and has some sort of deal. And their deal is in the realms of about, I believe, 3 billion or around that. And Vince is basically interested in a deal which is the surprising part, because obviously this is his baby. He's created it from obviously I want to say the ground up, but obviously his dad did have the WWF.
Yeah.
Vince has made it what it is today. We can't deny that. But Vince apparently is looking at the possibility, as long as it's more than what UFC got, essentially. So not to be competitive or anything, which when you're talking billions, I mean, I always find this fascinating with the wealthy. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a billionaire, as you probably gathered from the camera quality. But you know, when you're talking billions, is he even going to feel it? It's just more numbers in a bank account, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, he wants a better deal than the UFC got, but it seems like selling the WWE is on the cards. How do you feel about that, Carl? Because for me, I think it's a surprising one. I know we've got this deal with Saudi, which is kind of fucked at the minute because of COVID-19, but they're still going to put shows on over there eventually. But there's obviously been a lot of controversy as well. There's been a lot of wrestlers who are unwilling to do Saudi, either because of the absolute grueling task that it is to get there and get back, or because of the principle of it, because of the way their approach is to women's matches and the limitations to women's matches. So it seems like an unusual step, really. But
yeah,
we don't know what the deal would look like in its true form, but could this actually alienate a lot of wrestlers? Could we see a large amount of wrestlers then jump ship to American promotions, as it were?
Yeah, this seems like really way out of left field. Like, I don't think I ever thought of Vince selling the company. I thought he would well go to his grave before he ever thought of anybody else running the show, because he is a control freak, as we all know.
This is the thing. I mean, he's still massively hands-on with it. That's how much of a control freak he is. He hasn't even took a back step in his 70s.
No, definitely not. So, I mean, obviously, you can understand the allure of selling your company for a shit ton of money and just being able to finally retire. And you know, a big fuck you to Stephanie and Shane. But you know, that aside, you know, the whole UFC deal, that was by like a sports consortium of, like, you know, a lot of people who have started to build this kind of brand of, you know, being able to take over these huge companies and stuff. Whereas, I don't know, kind of just being like, oh, well, Saudi have got money, yeah, they'll buy them. I don't know, is it realistic? I'm not convinced. I don't think.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people willing to take advantage of the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but again, I'm given to understand that this sort of interest from Saudi has come because obviously their money is based in oil, and the way the world's going, you can't rely on your money being based in oil anymore. People are looking for different resources. It's becoming less relied upon. Albeit it'll be a long time before it's not relied upon. But when you're dealing with a finite resource like that, they're wanting to invest that money into other elements. And obviously a cash cow like an entertainment business, especially a massive one like WWE, makes sense. But could we see a bit of a, what's the word, oversaturation? Because obviously a lot of places might be looking at this sort of, well, let's cash in, let's get that Saudi money, as it were. So I don't know. It's an unusual position to be in. But I'm not saying that Saudi wouldn't be interested. They clearly would, because they've already got a deal for select pay-per-views. Obviously, they love the legends, such as, you know, the likes of Hogan and Goldberg and the like. So they're definitely game for it. They've definitely got the fans over there. But yeah, for me, I think this could potentially ruin the WWE.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much truth there is to it. I don't know whether it's just like a.
Well, I'll probably best, yeah, pointing that out, that this has not come from the horse's mouth. This isn't Vince sat down saying it. This isn't any sort of real fact-based, we've seen this deal being sort of ironed out, or we know that they're in talks. This is very much the rumor mill at the minute. But it's been mentioned previously, like I think we've even mentioned it in previous Ringside reports, and it seems to have resurfaced again. So there's something there. But this is sort of speculation from other parties, not from the WWE themselves.
Yeah, interesting. Definitely interesting, but let's see how it plays out.
Let's see what happens.
So,
and Carl, by the way, I'm looking at selling this podcast to Saudi Arabia if you're up to.
I mean, yeah, defo. You know, come on.
Fuck it, yeah.
Highest bidders will do anything.
I mean, I'm not as petty as Vince. I'll take less than UFC got.
I don't know about that, but you know, we'll see. We'll broker a deal. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, the one
Yeah.
I've got to kick off for my news this week is a certain WWE superstar is apparently unhappy with their current position within the company. Any ideas on who that might be? Well,
Well, this could be many, many people. Let's see. We could have, I don't know. Let's say Otis. No, he'll be absolutely fucking made up, actually. Roman Reigns.
Well, it's actually our friend Tomato Ciampa.
Ah.
And it's because we keep calling him Tomato Ciampa. No, it's not. So apparently, he's made a couple of posts on social media over the last kind of few weeks, and he's basically said that he misses 2018 Ciampa. The wrestling business, like life, is full of waves, high and lows. One moment you feel untouchable, the next you come crashing down. And basically, he feels since he lost his title, he's basically in one of his real serious career lows at the moment. So yeah, he thinks that basically everything since that point on has been somewhat of a disappointment to him. So yeah, I don't know what are your thoughts?
I can see why he's feeling low right now. He's come off as much as I weren't a big fan of the amount of times we've seen this match, he come off a massive match with Gargano.
Yeah.
Then he come off a great program with Karrion. But obviously that was for Tommaso, that was a mechanism to push Karrion as a legitimate threat.
Mm-hmm.
And then we haven't even seen him on TV in the last few weeks. So it feels a little bit like they don't really have anything for him right now. So I can totally understand why right now he would be feeling low, and he was definitely on more of a career high in 2018.
I mean, it's interesting that you raised the point about Karrion. So he went into the kind of highs and lows, kind of the wave thing he was talking about, and he said there has been, a few glimpses of highs kind of here and there, but so many lows. And he said, the chase to reclaim Goldie, the final chapter with Johnny, and most recently his encounter with Cross. So he sees them as all his biggest lows,
really?
Which I thought was very interesting.
Do you know what? I'm actually not that surprised with Karrion, because from his perspective, it is like you're the jobber in that scenario. I'm quite surprised with the Gargano one.
Yeah,
because they always put on really good matches together. But
I mean, from my perspective, who wasn't necessarily in the nitty gritty of NXT day to day, I've seen this enough by this point, and it maybe he's kind of feeling the same. Where it's like, can you not put me in any other feud other than with Gargano? But
it's like, I know they said fight forever, Vince, but they don't.
Apparently he's now been told as well that the reason he's off TV is he's getting the whole creative has nothing for you treatment.
He's getting Shayna Baszler.
He's getting Shayna Baszler. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel...
I mean, how can you go from being so prominent on the show to creative have nothing for you? That's insane. And do you know what? We both said when they were going into their feud, him and Gargano, we both said one of them is going for the main roster call-up.
Yeah.
This would have give Raw a shot in the arm. Raw's doing better lately, don't get me wrong. This would have give Raw a shot in the arm, and it would have give Tommaso something to do. So I call, you know what, if creative have nothing for them, that's because they're fucking shit.
Well, I mean, we already know that to be true. Let's be honest. But yeah, I don't know. You've got to feel for the guy. He was, he rose to, fucking the top in what was it, quite a bland NXT, to be fair to him. And he'd been out injured and he'd had to fight his way back and everything. And he got himself into some really exciting kind of stuff. And now to see the end of that culminate with a shitty finish with Gargano and then a squashing by Karrion, and now they've got nothing for him. It definitely feels like a fall from grace, so you can see it.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp on, but it really bugs me that it's like they've got nothing for him, because it's like, well, the story's right in itself. He's having an interaction with Randy Orton on Twitter. Randy Orton can't fight the Big Show forever in this unsanctioned match they're going to have. So I wonder who Randy could face. Maybe Tommaso could come and try and teach him a lesson. Maybe he doesn't have to be a legend just because he's the legend killer. This could be, Tommaso taking umbrage to the fact that he's attacked some of his childhood heroes, for instance. It could be something like that.
You could even go proper. You can even go proper into the fucking complete opposite of that and being like, well, okay, Orton's a legend killer. It's quite easy to go after the guys who are past it. I'm the cream of the crop. I'm the one rising to the top. Yeah. Forget the legends. Take on the up and comers.
Well, do you know what? He's called the legend killer. It doesn't have to be OAPs. He could literally just rock up and go, "I'm a legend in NXT."
Yeah.
There you go.
Why not?
But no, let's just sideline him and do nothing with him.
Yeah. Edges out.
When we've already got
Christian
like 3
and Big
people
Show
on the roster anyway.
Perfect.
Fucking crazy. So yeah, massively disappointing from that perspective. And yeah, I do feel for the guy. I really do. So I'll take over then, if I could, Cal. The next one we've got to offer some good news. We're gonna get another episode of I'll say critically acclaimed, probably. The Last Ride, Carl. The Last Ride, the documentary that we've all thoroughly enjoyed. We're getting an extra episode. Now, I don't want you to get your hopes up too much, because this episode is apparently going to air the same night as the horror show at Extreme Rules, or Extreme Rules, the horror show. I don't know, whatever they want to call it now. Extreme Horror Rules. This is going to air on the same night, and this is going to be compiled of stuff that they didn't use, essentially. Extra stuff that they had, because The Last Ride has been so popular. They're now sort of, they've edited together this sort of composite of different different bits that they've done with Undertaker and different interviews and so on like that. So it should still be a very interesting watch, but I don't know if it'll be as good as what we've already seen, because obviously this is the stuff that they deemed not worthy for that anyway.
I mean, I've just got visions of him like having a shit, and the camera crew's there, and he's like, "Can you see? I'm having a shit, guys." And then they go away, and then like they pop up, and he's there with Michelle, and they're getting it on, and he's like, "Guys, seriously, this is my last ride."
Nice, nice,
etc. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think obviously it's had a lot of plaudits this series, and a lot of people love it. There's a few that think it was really not very good in terms of kind of ruining the character for them, but
I think at the end of the day, if him becoming the American badass biker Undertaker is not going to ruin it for you, this show isn't. Like, it's caught the disbelief, you know what I mean? I thought it was a really interesting insight. It's weird seeing behind the scenes, don't get me wrong, but you can't not watch it. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, defo. But yeah, remains to be seen, I suppose, what this extra footage is.
I might even prioritize over Extreme Rules.
Oh yeah, I mean, fucking hell, everyone should do that. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! But
I wonder what WWE would do if like the viewership for Extreme Rules was significantly lower than the episode of The Last Ride.
Well,
that'd mess with them, that surely.
Undertaker is fighting Hornswoggle at SummerSlam.
Yeah,
that's what you'll get. But yeah, I don't know. I think, let's see. Are they just kind of, it gets to a point where are they just trying to cash in on it now, and it's going to be a load of shite, and it's going to kind of cast a shadow over what was, a really decent little mini-series that they had. Who knows? But let's see. See what they come up with.
Yeah. As I say, I hold out hope. I don't want to be too negative about it, but sadly, I think, like you say, it's that sort of cash in, isn't it? It's been really popular, more popular than they thought, so let's try and make some more money out of it. But I hope it doesn't compromise that, because, more footage, why not? Yeah, more stuff, learn more things about The Undertaker. Yeah, I'm on board for that.
Yeah. Okay, so the next snippet of news this week. So apparently, if you kind of cast your mind back to, the major releases that we saw from WWE at the midst of COVID, apparently this is, it's come to light that these were all Vince McMahon's releases that came directly from him. And basically, it's been kind of reported he's had some level of buyer's remorse around some of the superstars and the contracts that they were on. And so he basically determined that, especially for the likes of Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows in particular, that they didn't justify the contracts that they were on. And so, it came as a surprise to a lot of people. You had Paul Heyman, you had Bruce Pritchard at the time, who was in charge of the shows, and they didn't even know it was coming. So, yeah, I think it's quite an interesting one, this one. I think the fact that it's finally kind of been confirmed now that it was just Vince saying, do you know what? I don't want to pay these guys anymore. I don't see anything in them. And I think that we got a bad deal when we signed the contracts with them. So quite an interesting little spin, I think, on the whole kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because that was around the time, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but WWE were going through a phase of like buying up talent just so that they had them, like they had no sort of use for them, I suppose, but they were just like, let's offer, we've got the money, we've got the resources, let's offer contracts, let's keep them here so they can't go anywhere else. And obviously they changed tactic very fucking quick with the COVID-19 stuff, but it's interesting, and I have no doubt at all that it's true, to be honest with you, because I imagine he was offering them whatever the fuck they wanted at one point, within reason. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, it's hard, isn't it? Because you can kind of see it from like Vince's standpoint, to where he's the guy, he's the one paying these guys at the end of the day, and are they giving him the return on the investment
Yeah, you see, I take a little bit of umbrage with this as well, though, because it's like return on investment when they've proven that they're talented. Gallows and Anderson is a perfect example. They've proven that they're talented. They got massively over to New Japan. To paraphrase Cody Rhodes, if you can get over once, you can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got the tools there, right? But then when you're coupled with the WWE machine and the lack of creative freedom and artistic freedom, and then you're blamed for it, it's just crazy. Like, there could be a lot going on behind the scenes that you don't hear about because they're not famous. But has he ever considered looking at maybe the creative side of it and going, these stories aren't working? Like, maybe we should sack some people here or offer some really good contracts to some people here?
Yeah, I thought, I don't know whether we're going to cover it as part of another news story, but I remember seeing something this week around FDR coming out saying that when they got released, it was basically as a result of Vince kind of saying that, the creative team said they had nothing for them, and he wasn't aware of all the ideas that they pitched to Vince, like to get themselves over and to build new stories. And he said it was a massive flaw in the creative process, the fact that he wasn't being made aware of them. And apparently a lot of people felt that they were so scared to go to Vince with new ideas that, in case they got fired themselves, that they just wouldn't pitch the ideas that the wrestlers had.
Yeah, I
So,
get
yeah,
that,
I mean,
to be honest. I think that this is kind of a problem with the machine. When you're a small fish, you've got a lot less creative freedom to get yourself over. But when you're a big fish and you don't need to get yourself over, you can get away with whatever the fuck you want. It's a crazy mechanism. Like,
yeah.
I don't think he realizes that the position he puts a lot of the younger talent in. I mean, look at other examples like Zack Ryder, who got himself over through YouTube outside of WWE. Like, then was almost sort of, if you believe the rumor mill, was almost sort of punished for that. So it's like, even when they're trying their hardest to get themselves over, you're still relying on creative when you're that sort of not green's not the right word. They've all put the time in, but when you're that position in WWE, when you're not the likes of John Cena, that's you have to rely on the creative element and what storylines they're going to put forward and put you in. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting that it's kind of come to light now that it was Vince, and to a degree, he kind of feels a bit bad about it, for some people at least. But on the other hand, he's just kind of like, well, I don't know. He's been like
the
a
fact that he's
businessman.
used a global pandemic to fire a load of people that he regretted buying in the first place. Yep.
Yeah, it's obviously a bit snaky in it, but I suppose at the same time,
Yeah.
he's kind of realised now that he's paying these guys shitload of money, and like, why? If he's not going to keep them, or he has no plans for them. So yeah, strange.
And in some respects, it gives them the opportunity to do other things. Like, the reality of it is, FTR are a lot happier now. Gallows and Anderson will be when they can go back to Japan.
Mhm.
It seems that now they can go and be more creative and do what they love. It's probably the best thing for them as well, as much as it's a bit of a kick in the teeth at the time.
Yeah. I suppose as well for like Sarah Logan and Eric Rowe as well. They're obviously come a really good time for them to now be parents.
Vince offered her a release at the really good time, didn't he?
Well,
not paying any maternity leave now.
I'm pretty sure Eric offered her a release prior to that. So to be fair, but anyway.
So Carl, the next one I've got is concerns over Bruce Pritchard. Now, this one is not much of a news article, Carl, because it's speculative, but it's one that I wanted to discuss with you because the suggestion is Bruce has taken on, obviously, everything and is under a lot of stress with it all, and that it may be having an effect on him. So, he's having sleepless nights. He's having to deal with so many moving parts that it's chaotic. It's a really difficult time and a very stressful time for Bruce. Now, the reason I want to talk about it, because, again, that's people's observations and nothing word of mouth from Bruce. I find it interesting that Raw, whether you agree with this or not, by the way, that Raw has upped its game since Bruce was given control. That's the one that the focus is on. Bruce, do Raw and bring it back up, right? But SmackDown has just totally fucking plateaued. Like this particular one we're going to talk about this week was just awful, and it seems like the concentration's gone. Like I genuinely believe what's going on here in that there's too many moving parts. I don't think Bruce can handle 2 shows because I don't think SmackDown's being given enough attention because the shit they're booking there is just, and I get it, Raw's the flagship show and the 3-hour show, so that's the one you're going to give your focus to, but it just seems like there was nearly no time for SmackDown for the stuff they were putting across this week, which we'll talk about in This Week in Wrestling. But do you think there's truth to the rumors on that basis? Because I think you can almost see it evidently in the way the shows are up and down with each other.
I mean, there's like definite food for thought there, isn't there? Like SmackDown was somewhat decent when it was just Bruce's show and Heyman had Raw. But since he has had both, SmackDown has been shite. And Raw is getting marginally better to a degree, but also worse in some cases. But I just think even that is a bit odd because even though Raw is the flagship show, it's obviously SmackDown that has the Fox contract and has the most revenue behind it. So you'd think that they would still prioritize that above Raw. So it seems like a bit of a crazy decision, I think, for Bruce to kind of just sack off SmackDown. I can see why he's trying to obviously say, well, okay, we didn't need Heyman because I can do a better job, and maybe he's put all his focus on that. But yeah, I don't know. It seems, I don't know, maybe he just needs to just be brother love like he was back in the day and just, I love you, Raw, and I love you, SmackDown.
I've heard, and I can't remember where I read it now, so I do apologize, but that ultimately Bruce is actually a better person than Heyman to sell something or get something across to Vince. Apparently Heyman ends up quite argumentative with Vince and always has been because they're both quite bull-headed, whereas Bruce overall would have been a better shout because he can more subtly get his point across to Vince or turn Vince's sort of direction in the way it needed to go, kind of thing. And in some ways, he was a better call from that side of it to liaise with Vince and sort of support certain storylines and certain angles they were going forward with. Whereas, Vince would often, just because he was at loggerheads with Heyman, fall out with an idea. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of stuff makes a little bit of sense to me, but it's a real shame that they couldn't work together on both shows or something like that. The fact that it's all on his shoulders now, and it clearly has a detriment to one of the shows, because honestly, I'm not blaming Pritchard at all, but it just seems odd that the last 2 weeks of SmackDown have been awful, while the last 2 weeks of Raw have picked up. Really unusual parallel.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, you just highlighted a really important point in the fact that Pritchard is much more of a kiss ass than Heyman ever was.
I was trying to say it nicely, Carl.
I mean, we don't talk nice here on A to the K. I think, Pritchard is basically just a yes man for Vince. So it is a bit of I suppose you have to worry in that regard, because even though Heyman and Vince would fall out a lot of the time, Heyman had the ability to, potentially convince Vince to see the bigger picture sometimes.
But you see, I think the reason that they were so at loggerheads was the fact that Heyman is impassioned about the business that he does. Like, if he believes in a wrestler or a particular angle, he will fight tooth and nail for it, and I respect that out of Heyman, to be honest. But yeah, it's one of them. Ultimately, if you go to loggerheads with Vince too many times, you end up getting future endeavored.
Yeah.
Who won in the end, really?
True.
But yeah, so not much of a news article because it's just speculative, and time will tell. And hopefully, you don't want anyone to be struggling or particularly overly stressed, especially at a time like this. But it seems that maybe Bruce has had too much put on his shoulders at this point.
Yeah, be interested to see how he copes with both going forward. I think whether or not we see a bit more balance come into play, or whether or not he is still, trying to appease the kind of missed time on Raw and SmackDown suffers as a result. So the next piece of news, boom, is around our friend Adam Cole. So as we kind of discussed previously, it seemed, especially with Triple H behind him, that Adam Cole was going to be kind of catapulted into the main event scene, head straight up to WWE, and get quite a lot of like shine on him, I suppose, and quite a big program when he moves across, similar to Riddle, as he's kind of moved up. But apparently that is not to be the case. So it seems like he's not kind of going anywhere soon from NXT. It looks like even though he's going to be out of the title picture for some amount of time, they're hoping to book him still with the Undisputed Era, but as a face. Obviously, as like when he kind of joined, the natural reaction to Adam Cole is to cheer the guy because he is, he's someone that you want to get behind, and he seems like
he's got the charisma, hasn't he?
Exactly, he's got charisma, he's got the in-ring ability, he's got everything kind of going for him, and obviously he can play a good heel, but he's never really had that much of a face run. So I think that the plan is to not move him to the main roster anytime soon, but to keep him with the Undisputed Era, but as like a face faction, and really try and get the fans behind him over in NXT, which I don't know, seems like quite a surprising piece of news, really, because I thought after this he was going to be kind of catapulted straight away to the main event.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting it because this is the bit that worries me about what you're saying as well, because I'm looking at like, well, what else is there in NXT for him? It just seems a natural thing for him now. He's had the biggest title, he's done the faction, he's sort of been prominent on NXT for as long as he has, and the Undisputed Era, as good as a faction as they are, they've kind of had a fair run as well. I never like breaking things up, especially when WWE are not particularly fantastic with tag teams or factions. But at the same time, it felt like the right move, and it worries me that okay, that's a nice idea. Let's turn them face. Let's get the crowd, get behind them. Let's concentrate on the Undisputed Era. What are you going to book them in? Who against? What storylines are there? Straight off the top of my head, I can think of one other faction in the sense of saying, let's go for Escobar's faction. That's sorry, I keep forgetting what it's called. It's something about Phantasma, but yeah, like that. They're legitimately building well, so you could pit them against them. But I can't see what they can do with the Undisputed Era at this point.
No, I think I suppose without Adam Cole, the Undisputed Era is just nothing.
But you know what? Why not move them all to the main roster? Why not let them follow Cole? Why not have him rock up on Raw, and then he can go after the Mexican medley. He can go after the Street Profits. He can go after the Viking Raiders. He can go after Seth Rollins' crew. Straight away, ton of options there.
Do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they're a bit reluctant after the whole AJ Styles and OC debacle, because OC never really got over on the main roster. And I know that they were never in NXT, but obviously they were quite a big kind of showpiece outside of the WWE, especially in Japan.
Yeah.
And when they brought them in, they just kind of fell flat. So I don't know whether Vince is a bit hesitant, because obviously Cole, we know, will get over similar to AJ. But then you've got the Undisputed Era, and maybe not so much. I don't think they'll
I
have
know,
as
naturally though, in any team you have your star. Do you know what I mean? Like, I, no, I'm gonna go back on that. I'm trying to give examples, and I'm like Edge and Christian, Dudley boys. No, to be fair, I suppose they're all legitimate in their own rights. But look at, I'll have to give a modern example, so it's not quite as good as I was going to try and do. But look at, Seth Rollins' team. They are relying on Rollins. There's no two ways about it. Theory and Murphy by themselves are nothing, and they're not very bookable. But with the faction, with the disciples of Rollins, it works. So, for the sake of the story and the way you could book the Undisputed Era, I think it would work. I think the issue they had with the OC was they'd already had a solo tag run and fucked them right up. That was half the problem, when they were doing stupid, hokey, fake doctor gimmicks and making ball jokes. Like, that might be what affected the OC going forward.
Maybe slightly, yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know.
I take your point that the minute they split the Undisputed Era up, it'd fuck the other two right up anyway, on the main roster especially.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because as you said, in like an ideal world, they'd all get brought up to the main roster and they'd all thrive. But I think as it is today, Adam Cole's going to suffer in order to kind of keep the Undisputed Era kind of relevant. But if they move them all over, then there's no saying that the Undisputed Era wouldn't just kind of go by the wayside. And
I think they're doomed on NXT anyway. Look at what they've been in recently. It's like, oh yeah, Robert Strong is shit scared of Dexter Lumis. That's the storyline they're in at the minute. Yeah, they look strong. What a team.
Yeah. No, true. I think it'd be interesting to see, because surely they can't keep Cole down there for much longer. So hopefully it's kind of means to an end, I think.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see what they do, because I'm honestly, I don't know what they're going to do, so I really want to know what they're going to try. So we'll move on to the next one then, Carl, if we could. And I'm intrigued to know your thoughts on this one as well. And watch out, it's a touchy subject, Carl. So Sonya Deville has expressed an interest in competing for a men's title, and has cited that, like, basically that's sort of the future, I suppose, for wrestling. And we've seen it on TNA. I think were the first ones to do it, potentially. Well, not the first, because obviously you could technically say WWE did it first without knowing if there were any others before that. But obviously we had the likes of China holding the IC title. But WWE have been notably, over the last couple of decades, really squeamish about intergender matches. So I can't see it happen anytime soon from their side of it. But Sonya Deville has expressed a desire and interest to be the first woman to, or again, China, but to be the person who does this. And it got me thinking, do you know what? I actually think it'd be really good. I think it could work if Sonya was sort of cocky enough to go after AJ Styles. I'm not saying she has to win, but just to get the point across that she could, right? But I think AJ could actually put on a really good match with her. I think he'd do a really good job of getting her over and legitimizing it. And the IC title is kind of a realistic one to go for. Can you imagine her trying to challenge Braun Strowman? Just aesthetically, you'd go, well, he's going to squash you. Because that's kind of his gimmick. He fights two people at a time most of the time. But for me, I'm like, I genuinely wouldn't be upset if, like, AJ somehow talked himself into a match with her. I say talked himself because he's obviously quite clearly stated he's not willing to go against open challengers. They have to earn their shot. So I don't know how they go about her earning her shot. But that it feels like a storyline ready to happen, to be honest with you. How do you feel about the concept of intergender matches and the potential of women starting to hold men's titles?
I don't mind the concept of intergender matches. I hate the idea of Sonya Deville going after a main title because it's Sonya Deville. I mean, like for China, it made sense. She was the fucking ninth wonder of the world. She was like a freak athlete, and it made sense. You could put her in there with the likes of Jericho or anyone like that, and it would feel believable. Sonya Deville can't even get a win over Mandy Rose, and it's like, you know what I mean? You're gonna put her in there against AJ Styles. Like, why? Like,
you make a good point there, Carl, because I think they'd have some work to do. Because if they give her a shot now, as much as I've just said I'd like to see it up against AJ, and I would. I'm not against the actual idea of the match. They'd only be doing it as a box ticking exercise. If you know what I mean, to go, well, she's part of the LGBTQ community. So, did I say that right? I think I missed a plus. But she's part of the community, right? And it's pushing this intergender match thing. So it would be WWE going, look, we've ticked all the boxes, yeah, right?
Yeah.
And which wouldn't be a good thing for her because it needs to make sense story-wise. So this is something that they'd have to do after building her up as a legitimate threat.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like fuck the fact she's like part of the fucking LGBTQ whatever community. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, if you're gonna do like an angle like this, you'd have like a Ronda Rousey, or you'd have like a fucking Becky Lynch maybe, or something. Anyone over Sonya at the moment.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, to be fair, Carl, the reason I mentioned the LGBTQ community is because that is the reason I could see WWE going for this. Because from a PR point of view, they'd love to say that, oh, look how good we are. And I hate when it's done like that. It should feel natural. I've nothing against it, but it should feel like it's been naturally done. Like you say, the Ronda Rousey kind of stuff would feel legitimate because they've booked her as a beast.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, if you look back to when she debuted and she fought at WrestleMania and she battered Triple H, it was great entertainment and it was believable and it was everything you could ever want. But to kind of go, well, okay, I'm a woman, I'm going to go after a man's title because it's equality and blah blah blah. Like, I honestly, I couldn't give a fuck. Like, like look at it this way: UFC aren't allowing the women's fighters to go up, you know, against the men. So why do WWE need to do that? Do you know what I mean?
For me, because we've had similar noise like this. I don't know if you remember a little, well, probably a year or more ago now. Becky Lynch made a similar noise where she was saying that women's titles shouldn't be called women's titles. It's like, yeah, but they kind of need something to call it because you can't go world title and world title. It'll just confuse people. They're using it as a separation. They're not, you know, they're not denigrating it by calling it a women's title. It just so happens that that's the women's title and that's the men's title, but they're both world champions.
Yeah, I mean,
what else do you call it?
You can kind of buy into it by the fact that they don't call the world title or the universal title the universal men's title. So I can kind of see it from that regard. The fact is like, oh, well, that's the women's and that's just the title. So I get that, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know.
Personally, for me, if WWE are gonna run with something like this, and I'm not saying they are, by the way, this is Sonya saying it'd be a good move. But if WWE are going to run with something like this, then they need another concentration. They need another way of organizing it, and I think that they need to then lean into weight class, because with all due respect, it would become unrealistic to have Alexa Bliss versus the Big Show. Right, and that's not a sexist thing, because I was annoyed when they had Rey Mysterio versus Batista. I felt the weight class was too weird there. I didn't like the fact he won the title against him because he seemed like he was outpowered. So it didn't feel right for me. I thought that's why you're meant to have a cruiserweight title, right? Nevertheless, I think if you're going to lean into the weight class thing, then it could work, couldn't it? Anyone can go for any title as long as you fit into that weight class. Then you're not being totally outgunned and outpowered by someone who's massive and has a much bigger reach. But
I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole weight class thing makes perfect sense. Like, it's always kind of bothered me as well that Rey Mysterio, a glorified cruiserweight, has been the world heavyweight champion when he was never a heavyweight. Same to a degree. And it doesn't really count, I know, but like the Brian Kendrick, and I loved the Brian Kendrick character, but he was a world champion for a hot minute. And it was like, what? He's a cruiserweight? So, like, they just don't buy into their own weight divisions, in which case, well, what is the point? So I completely believe in that as well. Like, you know, it works for the UFC. If, you know, like CM Punk was the world heavyweight champion in WWE, he's a welterweight in UFC. Like, weight classes mean something.
Never getting there, the heavyweight champion in UFC, not without piling a ton on.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, I think if they are going to go this route, then definitely weight classes make sense. And
you need something.
You know, is Sonya Deville going to be, you know, a heavyweight challenger? No. Like, and you know, like Alexa Bliss, definitely not. So, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense.
For me, then they could actually justify the 700 titles they've got. They could have welterweight and so on, and they could organize it properly like that, and then have anyone go for anything. I've no issue at all with the intergender matches. You know, it's entertainment at the end of the day. It might be a little different in UFC because that is actual fighting, and I understand why they're limiting that. I say limit. I don't think they've done it, But I understand that they have bigger concerns in that sense. But WWE, it's entertainment. They can definitely do that. It's not a problem. And the proof's in the pudding. I believe the TNA, the main title in TNA was quite recently held by a woman.
Yeah.
And to the point that it wasn't even that big a thing, if you know what I mean. Like, it weren't like, oh my God, it's held by a woman. It was just like, yeah, she earned it. They didn't make a massive thing about it. The fact that, and I think that's great. Yeah, TNA are just approaching it the right way in a lot of senses. Although I think she's been had the title stripped off her or some shit now. But I don't follow TNA enough to know what's going on there.
Yeah, I think she was accused of making a derogatory comment or something on social media, so she's been fired, I believe now. So I think she'll get picked up soon. She's I think it was Tessa Blanchard, so Tully Blanchard's daughter.
Right. Yeah, I didn't. I don't know why I didn't realize the connection. Same last name, but
yeah. So I don't know. I think she'll find a feat soon. But yeah, she by all accounts, she made something like that work for her in TNA, and it wasn't so much about like, oh, it's because of this, that, and the other. It was just because she was good enough, and she did it. So if it does go that way, I hope it's not because of any kind of like community or any kind of like, oh, it's this kind of day and age or whatever. I hope it's just based on the fact that they deserve it and they earn it.
Yeah. That's all I want. Good storytelling and believable. It's all I'm after. And I know I'm sat watching WWE wanting stuff to be believable. Ridiculous, isn't it? But yeah, that's all I want. It's all I want, Carl. Sorry, I believe the next one's yours, isn't it?
Yes. So the next one to talk about is so it looks like our old friend Jeff Hardy is stuck with the WWE for quite a while. And I say quite a while. It's not really quite a while, but that's what's kind of getting banded around. Basically, because he was out injured, WWE basically extended his contract because he wasn't able to perform the dates that his contract, was signed up to. So as a result of that, he's actually contracted now until March 2021. So obviously, there's been a lot of speculation around the fact that Matt has obviously gone to AEW, and expecting Jeff to follow suit. But I don't know. I think based on what I've seen from the whole kind of Jeff Hardy vignettes and his whole little kind of documentary, if you will, like the little mini series that he had, I legitimately think he feels like he owes WWE something because I'm pretty sure they paid for his latest stint in rehab. And they've helped him kind of correct his life and stuff. So, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it was, the WWE that did that for him. And so
it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest,
why he wants to stay there and pay back to them, regardless of the whole kind of silly storyline stuff that they got him in at the minute, like literally talking about his addiction every 2 minutes. But yeah,
it turns out he was an addict. Yeah, did you hear about that?
I know. Yeah, it took us all by surprise. No one's ever seen that match against Sting at fucking Bound for Glory or whatever it was.
No one's ever seen him drunkenly singing with fans doing the
yeah, definitely not.
The Matt, what was it when he was doing the broken Matt thing and they had that little song about Brother Nero and the obsolete thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was videos going around, wasn't there, where he was sort of under some sort of influence, just singing that with people and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
certainly nobody on this podcast has ever met him whilst he was off his tits either. Definitely didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, Carl, you met him. I don't think he ever met you.
Yeah.
I don't think he could see you, Carl.
I was not there. I was not there at all. Yeah, look, I think it's one of them. Jeff has come back and, we'll talk about SmackDown when we get to it. He's not, I don't know, he's not amazing for me, perfectly honest. I think it's one of those, even if he went to AEW, like what would happen? He'd get put in a tag team with Matt, and it did ruin all the good work with Matt there as well. I don't know. I'm not against him being there.
I am. I really don't want him in AEW. I don't want him anywhere near Matt. I have a bit of a bias here because I'm not a fan of Jeff. Shoot me if you must, Carl, but I'm not a fan of Jeff. I never have been. I've always been more when they split and they went on the solo runs. I never bought into the Jeff thing. I never bought into his world title run. I weren't a fan. I was all for Matt. I love the Mattitude stuff. I loved his run, and I genuinely think he's the more talented from a creative perspective. Jeff may have took more risks over his career in terms of the high flying shit, but I always thought Matt was the more creative, and I was always more behind Matt as not that you have to pick one or the other, but I don't know. I've never been a massive fan of Jeff, so I'm staying WWE. I'm cool with it.
I mean, it sounds weird because WWE is significantly more promo based and like character heavy, but I think WWE suits Jeff a lot more than the Indies or AEW ever would.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the promos and stuff, it's just because of, I feel like it's a safer space for him. The fans will always get behind him and appreciate the stuff he does and the high risk.
No matter what, he's going to get that big crowd and that nostalgic pop, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think like even not so much for like nostalgia, but like the fact he's got like this babyface like gimmick around him that even if he is shit on the mic and even if he, you know what I mean, he has got shit kind of storylines, people just kind of resonate with him for whatever reason and get behind him. And I think that wouldn't happen so much in AEW or in the Indies as it does in WWE. So I think he's made the right choice staying there, if I'm perfectly honest. So I think a lot of people are like, oh God, get him out and get him joined up with Matt again. But why? Because I don't think it's going to do either of them any good. So,
no,
you know, I just think stay
again,
there.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, because I didn't follow TNA at the time, but didn't he have more success by himself in TNA as well? Like doing the whole Willow thing and stuff like that, rather than being Brother Nero. So it's not like they worked fantastically together in TNA with the broken gimmick anyway. He was a part character to Matt, but the solo stuff he did in TNA was done in his own right. So they don't need to be together. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Right, so moving on then, Carl. You might have seen quite recently people are getting rather petty about ratings when it comes to NXT versus AEW.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, I'll hold my hands up, right? Because people know that we prefer AEW or we prefer Dynamite as it stands at the minute as a show. I'll hold my hands up and agree that this is AEW people being petty. Because when they lose in the ratings, they start mentioning the demos. And I'm like, just take it. Just say, yeah, they won in the numbers. It doesn't really matter. You know the reality of it, right? But this segment is just a callback to one of the heads of TNT, and this is back in, I believe, 2002, referred to the demos, referred to the demographics in terms of how they sell advertising space and the like. And they cited the 18 to 49 demo as their key demo for what they're looking for. That's the one. You can be shit in the rest in some senses. That's the one they're looking for. That's where you need the success for them to then go, you're marketable for TNT. And this has been cited as essentially what they said in 2002 supports the argument that the likes of Tony Khan and Jericho are trying to make. Now, whilst there may be truth to that, and that might be a very valid point, to me, it's like that's the behind the scenes, how are we gonna sell this show to the network kind of shit. The reality of it is they got less viewers, and that they just need to sort of let it go. I think it's getting really kind of silly at the minute. And I don't know, Jericho is kind of a heel. I know they don't really fall into the proper heel face dynamics in AEW anyway, so sometimes he does something that the crowd love and they get behind him, but he's kind of that kind of character, so he might be in character when he's being like this. I don't know. And to be fair, it's not like WWE haven't had their shots, because I believe Bailey, again in character, or was it Sasha, one of them made some remarks about beating AEW. So it's not as if it's not happening on both sides of it, but to me it's just like, it's so close as well that it's like, why is he even fucking arguing? It's not like the yard. If they were getting like 300,000 to AEW 700,000, then you're getting battered. Right now, it's not close that it's like, well, you're both doing well then, aren't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just become sort of really strange.
Yeah, I think, like, don't get me wrong, the demos matter, definitely, and they've definitely got an argument.
But from a fan perspective, do you think it matters?
I mean, look, it's definitely petty, as you said. Like, when AEW were trouncing NXT in both demo and numbers, they didn't give a shit about the demo. That wasn't what they were chatting about. They were chatting about the overall viewers.
Yes.
100%. And then ever since NXT has kind of had a bit of a resurgence, if you will, and overtaken AEW in terms of like global viewers, it's definitely been all about the demo and whatever, and that's where the pettiness kind of comes into play. But regardless, the demo is what counts, and TNT have gone on record as well of saying that they could give a fuck as long as they've got that demographic, they're happy.
Exactly.
So 100% it matters, but at the same time, like they just don't have as many views, so just stop fucking clutching.
Exactly.
Like clutching.
Here's something they've done as an example, Carl, right? The demo matters, right? From that standpoint, from a business standpoint, from TNT standpoint, the demo matters, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that Tony Khan and Chris Jericho both gone out there and mentioned the demo, almost saying like that's the only one that matters, so we're winning. They've had the likes of Disco Inferno now asking anyone not in that demographic to boycott AEW. So it's like you're actually creating yourselves a problem because you're getting people's backs up. You're saying, well, I'm too old to like wrestling. Then it becomes a bit like that. Do you know what I mean? So to me, it's just like, it's not even worth arguing about it. Like they're both putting on good shows at the minute. You can't get around that. Like I've complained about NXT, but in the last few weeks, I thought it's been really good. And don't get me wrong, I still prefer Dynamite most weeks, but you can't deny NXT's improved. Certainly when it comes to this war, they have reacted to the fact that they were losing in the ratings, and rightly so.
Yeah, definitely as well. And I think, no matter how petty it was, the whole Great American Bash thing and whatever, it seems to have done the business for them. Do you know what I mean? So, fair play. And I think, it's all well and good to have the 18 to fucking 49 or whatever the fuck it is demographic. It's all great news and stuff, but, you don't have that classic fan who's in the 50 plus, and you don't have that new emerging fan who's in the, teens, like fucking, the younger demographic either. So it's a bit like, so,
See, for me, I kind of get the over 51, not to lose our demographic here, but I kind of get the over 51 because it's like, well, yeah, because most of the people you loved are still on WWE. They still rock Hogan back up and all that. So yeah, I get why you prefer WWE. It just makes sense. They're the people you know and like. The younger ones, I'm surprised. It's interesting to see, and sadly, I'm not in that demographic myself anymore, so I don't know how they all think. But it's interesting to see that they're not pulling in the younger viewers because they're obviously they're the future 18 to 49 demographic.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's just. I mean, obviously, it's more PG WWE, isn't it? And it's more kind of family friendly. So maybe it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, mum and dad's letting them watch it.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I think, look, they just need to stop being so petty about it all. The fact is that they were on top for quite a while. The last few weeks, they're not on top in terms of total viewers. And sure, they've still got the demo, but they should see this as like a warning, set the game up and do something to get back on top fully.
Yeah.
If they're not going to do that, then there's pointless kind of fucking going, oh, we've got the demo, because you're still losing. So
yeah, and to be honest, I'd be if I was in their shoes, I'd be behind the scenes going, look, COVID's fucked everyone. Some of the stuff they were planning on putting on, like the Blood and Guts match and stuff like that, couldn't happen. So it's done them over. Something shocking to a lot of what they had booked, and they've got a smaller roster and lost people as well. So like. It's obviously going to be hard. It's going to be hard for everyone at this point, and WWE have got bigger roster and big. Like WWE struggled on the roster fronts and started pulling main roster people into NXT because they can.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's the situation we're all in. They might just want to take it on the chin and go, "Well, we'll get over it on the other side of this pandemic."
I think as well, we've all got to realize what a draw Moxley is for AEW as well, for the 18 like to fucking 40 whatever demographic. So obviously everyone knows he's at home kind of recovering. So if Moxley's your favorite, you're not going to tune in, are you? So it's kind of, you know what I mean? It'd be interesting to see once they're all kind of back to full strength, if you will, and they're not throwing weird gimmick pay-per-view things out every week that's actually a TV show. Do you know what I mean? We still got Fight for the Fun this week with AEW. So yeah, let's see once all kind of the dust settles and it's just back to being a normal weekly TV show, I guess, and see
Yeah.
what the figures look like then. But yeah, it's getting very petty. I think they just need to both step the game up and both try and outperform the other in both demo and total views.
Exactly, and maybe take a back step from making comments on Twitter and just let your show
it'd be
speak
nice.
for itself. Maybe do that for a little bit.
It would be nice.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? Right.
So, speaking of AEW, so as we know, a friend of our show, Sammy Guevara, unfortunately was served a ban recently, or a suspension, and has to undergo some sensitivity training for some comments that he made in the past, a few years ago, around Sasha Banks. And it's basically come to light now that Tony Khan has basically said to Sammy that he wanted to donate his earnings basically to a charity that kind of dealt with this kind of stuff, and Sammy was obviously very agreeable and accepting of that. So he's basically, as well as undergoing that sensitivity training, he's made the donation now to I think it was the Women's Centre of Jacksonville.
I believe so. I think the connection there being, doesn't he own the Jaguars?
Yeah, so obviously Tony owns the Jaguars, and a lot of the AEW shows, I think where they are at the minute is out of Florida. I think it's in Jacksonville as well, in the
right, okay,
in the the Jaguars fucking football field. So yeah, I mean, it's one of them. It's obviously it's a nice touch, I think, but
it is in a sense that it's a shame that it was motivated by Khan.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one because they're kind of trying to paint Sammy in a positive light by saying he's donated his stuff, but obviously it was a Tony Khan thing. So then the flip side to that is, would Sammy not do that off his own back? And I'm not sure it's given the right PR that they probably wanted. But PR aside, I think it's obviously a good cause, and if Sammy's taken a leave of absence and undergoing kind of a suspension and stuff, then it makes perfect sense to donate that money to a cause that would find it useful. And obviously Tony's picked a good one, but yeah, I'm not too sure how productive it was the way it's kind of come about in terms of a PR story.
I know, yeah, the way it reads is kind of like it's been insisted upon him, rather than if it had been more about like Sammy's gone, I want to do this, then you'd be like, fair play to you. And I'm not saying that he didn't, like you say, he's been totally agreeable to it, but it's just a shame that the motivation came from the top end.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the next one, Carl. It's quite simply and very sadly that Rusev has tested positive for COVID-19.
Yeah.
So this will essentially ruin the potential of if he was due to appear at Slammiversary, unless it's already been taped. There was always rumors that he was going to rock up on TNA anyway. This is going to put a halt to that, most likely. And the other potential is, Carl, and I don't want you to shed a tear here, but this could mean that we don't see Lana on TV anytime soon, because obviously she is the real life wife. Oh, I've been drinking. Sorry,
real life life.
That one of Rusev. So she will most likely need to isolate as well. So it's a bit twofold. It affects WWE and it affects whatever plans Rusev had. Which, again, if you believe the suggestion from the tease on the Slammiversary video, was that he was going to be going to TNA, which will most likely be halted now as well.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the case, obviously that's a huge loss, I think, for TNA, because it would have been amazing to have someone of his caliber on the show, make a debut. It would have been like a really, I don't know, it would have kind of given a bit of a buzz that they've kind of lacked for a while. But I think, to Lana as well, like, a lot. She's controversial. She's the fucking Marmite of the wrestling industry, and she, like, people either really like her or fucking absolutely despise her. But I think,
I'll let you know what Camp Batman would be like.
I mean, she's come out recently and basically said that obviously both her mom and her dad have had COVID, and now Rusev's got COVID, and it's like, okay. So I think, obviously she's going through some stuff at the minute. She was in an angle with Natty, who's also had to be pulled from TV because of Tyson. So she's kind of nowhere.
But this is the Marmite thing, though, Carl. If you're not a fan of Lana anyway, you're going to be sat there now going, and she's ruined Rusev's career.
Well, that as well. But so I don't know. I think definitely a bit of a shame for Miro or Rusev.
Yeah, I
And
keep calling him
hopefully,
Rusev because I'm not sure what he officially is going to call himself when he goes to TNA. I know
yeah,
his handle's now Miro, isn't it? But
yeah, I think he's like Miroslav or something, isn't his name? I don't know, but
yeah,
yeah, I think obviously it's pretty shitty. So hopefully he makes a speedy recovery, as do the parents of Lana as well. But
yeah,
it's a shit thing going around at the minute, isn't it? And
it certainly
it's
is.
getting more and more people. So hopefully it's a positive outcome for all involved.
With any luck, yeah.
But as we segue nicely onto more talk around Rusev, he basically gave an interview this week, and he actually said that there's a current WWE superstar that he would deem to be the greatest professional wrestler ever.
Now, is he going to say Randy Orton because he's just competed in the greatest wrestling match ever, or?
Well, I was gonna pass back to you for thoughts. So do you think who do you think you might have said, Randy Orton?
No, that was a joke. I'd be very surprised if he said Randy. I am going to say AJ Styles.
Interesting. It's actually someone that many people wouldn't necessarily think of in terms of coming right to the forefront of the mind. But once you hear the name, you'll probably think he's got an excellent point. And it's someone that we've both spoken about before, Anthony, as someone who is a fantastic star. But he's quoted as saying, "Come on, man, what are you asking me? I'm not a booker. But as I said before, he's the greatest professional wrestler ever. So I mean, that tells you everything. Or I hope it does." And he was talking about Cesaro.
Okay, yeah, I take your point. I would not have guessed Cesaro at any point, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, genuinely, because we've both mentioned that he's underutilized in WWE and he's never had a decent push as a singles competitor. And yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. For
So
me,
I would never have guessed it, but I totally get where you're coming from.
he is the biggest travesty in the professional wrestling current state of affairs for me, because he's been there for so long and he's consistently done such good stuff in the ring.
Oh yeah,
And fine, he can't talk very well, and he's got like a
I think
Swiss
he's
Swiss
improved over the
accent.
years, to be honest. I
Yeah, I mean,
remember
me too.
like when he was doing what was that one he was in where the gimmick was that they all weren't American. Like they do every once in a while.
The Un-Americans, was Sylvain Grenier there
I can't
and
remember. No,
Rene
it was
Dupree?
he was in it with like it was as a foil to I think it was Punk at the time, maybe. No, as a foil to Roman potentially, and it was like Sheamus and him and Stu Bennett, or what was his name in WWE?
Wade
Wade
Barrett.
Barrett. And those sort of people. I can't remember what they called it, but the gimmick was that they all weren't American. It was like, I'm British, I'm Irish, I just can't remember what they called the faction, but it's essentially the Un-Americans like they usually do. And when you look at him in that, and he and all the previous, and even in the bar, actually, he wasn't the talker of the group, and I think he's improved, especially because I don't want to say stuck with, that's unfair. He's with Shinsuke now, so he is the talker. He is the mouthpiece of that tag team quite clearly. But I think he's improving. He's never going to be like Jericho in the ring or on the mic, but I think he's improving in terms of the mic skills. To give him credit.
I mean, for me, like, I keep saying this as well, like, not everyone needs to be a talker. If it's done right and you've got someone who's like his advocate, or you've got someone who, like, you don't even need an advocate sometimes. You just need, like what's wrong with him kind of showing up, fucking like having like a one-line, a catchphrase or something, but he shows up, he batters someone, says his catchphrase and leaves. Like that would have weeks and weeks of longevity, as long as his in-ring performances were
it's a
as
really
we
good
know
point.
they can be.
Prime example of that, Cal. Undertaker, not a good talker.
No.
Still the legend that he is. Not
exactly.
A good talker.
So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's just been dealt a proper shitty hand over the years, and I think it's such a shame because Ring of Honor days and indie days. You know what I mean? Like, I think he was called fucking, I can't remember his name, Castro Cogniglegli. I don't know what the fuck he was called. Some weird name, right?
Yeah.
he was fucking, he was tearing it up. You know what I mean? Him, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, or fucking Tyler Black, whatever he was called on the indies. Like, these guys were fucking fire. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, they've all kind of gone on because they could talk and become something a bit bigger. And he's just kind of gone there despite his ability and just kind of like flounder. And it's a bit of a just a massive shame. I think he's got everything. He's got the body, he's got the height, he's got, what Vince would look for in a main star. He just can't talk.
He's not got the hair.
This is true. It didn't bother Austin. I'm just saying.
It didn't. No. But it's definitely a good shout from Rusev, that, in all fairness. But an absolute travesty, really. I mean, this would have been the perfect opportunity for them as well. With limited roster, you've got people there who can wrestle and who you can now utilize and push because, they're there and they're available and they're not stricken down with COVID. It would have been a perfect opportunity. And as much as I'm enjoying him in a tag team with Shinsuke, I'd have much more preferred a singles run.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just saying as well, I'm just going to throw out there, Drew McIntyre, Cesaro. Just saying.
Booked right, that could be awesome. Like, I don't, from your perspective, Carl, right, you'd probably enjoy that now as it is, right? To get the fans on board, they'd need to do a bit of work. But that would be an awesome match. No two ways about it. But I don't think people are behind Cesaro enough for that to be a big enough booking. But all it takes is a little bit of work on Cesaro as a singles competitor to get him to that point. And instead, we sent Dolph Ziggler over. We both went to the same place at the same time. Yeah. Why they sent Dolph over to Raw for some reason. But yeah, it's baffling, some of the choices they make sometimes. Baffling. Right, so I've got the next one, haven't I?
Yep.
So, Charlotte, Carl. I mentioned earlier that there's been a leak in WWE. We are, of course, talking about Charlotte's breast implant. So it's now come to light from Charlotte. She's put it out there on social media in some capacity that what she had to go for was surgery on one of her implants. That apparently had been leaking or something. I don't quite know how implants work, but there was issues with it and had been for some time. She was going to get it rectified, and hopefully it would rectify it for good. The problem being, and the reason she's sort of gone onto social media, is that it looks like she's going to be out for a bit longer than first believed. Now, originally she said it was only going to be a couple of weeks. It's seeming like it might be a few weeks now. There's still no specific time on it. WWE have not sort of suggested their plans in the future with her or when she's going to return, hopefully ready for SummerSlam, but also a bit up in the air at the minute. But it seems like she's going to be out a bit longer because of this issue with her implants, which I think you actually called it last week when we weren't sure why she was going out. So hats off to you, Carl. You know your implants.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't know they were leaky or anything. I couldn't see any residue lying around the ring or nothing like that. But I thought it was just kind of like a time. I know they only last so long, so I thought it might be something to do with that. But it sounds like she's gone through a bit of hell. I believe by all accounts, she's had a few leaks in the past, and she's gone for the solution which would give her the quickest turnaround to not lose any momentum. But now she's obviously had to, for her own health, kind of take the next kind of level of precaution, I suppose.
It's funny when you say for her own health as well, because I think even Ric Flair has come out and said he hopes that she takes as much time as she needs or wants rather than trying to rush back. And I think that's a fair point, because she's a big star. As much as I've not been too favourable of her in the past, there's no two ways about it. She's a big star in the women's division, and she can take the time. When she comes back, she'll get a pop and she'll be able to be in the main event scene again. It's not like she's going to lose out on the opportunity. She can take the time as much as she needs, really, in some senses.
That's it. They're not going to bring her back fucking on the as a curtain jerker, rather. They're going to bring her back to the main event. So
yeah, exactly. And to be honest, in some senses, a longer absence might be better for that sort of return and that pop.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be much of a pop because there'll probably still be no fans, but the fact she's been fucking forced down our throats.
Then performance center people instructed to cheer, though.
Well, exactly. But I mean, like we've literally seen far too much of her over the last kind of few months. So absolutely get her home, rested for a while, and then bring her back to one show of their choosing that needs the most help, and just have her be the star on that, as opposed to everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the news on Charlotte.
Okay. So my last one, just a little bit of a small tidbit. But it looks like the plans may have changed for Extreme Rules Horror Show, Extreme Rules, horror, yeah, whatever that's called.
I think it's now Extremely Horrible Rules.
A series of extremely horrible,
An extremely horrible show.
Rules.
That was it.
Yeah. So apparently, the plans have changed a bit for this now. So I think they were going to originally show it live, but it looks like they may be reverting back to a taped aspect of it, which I think, based on some of the match types, where obviously I'm assuming whatever the match type is with Bray and Braun would have been taped anyway.
Yeah, I think that was definitely going to be another cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, so I think it probably makes sense because they're going to have to find time to tape that anyway. So hopefully, I think it's just more around the fact of when are they going to tape it, because they're so adamant around taping as much kind of TV in advance, and obviously it's only a week away, and it's like, well, when are they going to find the time to slot that in and actually tape the show? But
I think especially with it sort of not being part of their plan. Like originally they were going to do it live, so I think that's probably the difficulty, because they're now going to have to try and get NXT boxed off. They're going to have to probably done Raw, but they're going to get NXT boxed off, still bits of SmackDown, I imagine, and trying to fit this in as well. It's going to be a chaotic week for them trying to get it all done.
Yeah, and I think maybe it'll give them time to add some special effects when Rey Mysterio, when he loses his second eye. It's like, what's that jumping out the sky? Rey's eye. There it goes. But yeah, I don't know. maybe they'll do some 4D kind of shit.
Well, that match is going to be entirely CG.
Wouldn't put it past them at this point.
I'm genuinely. They've done it. They've boxed it off, Carl, because I need to watch Extreme Rules now to know how the fuck they're going to do that match.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting stipulation. Probably the most interesting stipulation I've ever seen, I think. So who knows?
This is above hair versus hair. I'll be honest with you.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, a little bit more at stake.
I'm because even the Ray way, the way Ray put it across is like he'll use his hands or whatever. It's like we're not actually gonna like this. I'm willing to suspend this, but if we're not gonna see that, so how are you gonna try and suggest we have? Or are you just going to do one of them things where it doesn't happen because of shenanigans?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether there's some kind of additional meaning to it, where like obviously Dominic's going to get involved somehow and turn on Ray, and it's like whether or not there's an eye for an eye in that sense somehow. I don't know, but hopefully it's not as literal as literally someone's going to pop their eye out.
And from sorry, I don't mean to moan about it because we're not talking about Extreme Rules yet, but like from a booking point of view, it's like you've only got one, right? Like,
well, exactly.
This is a really stupid idea for you.
Yeah, not the best, since he was wasn't it his stipulation as well?
Yeah, right. So you potentially going to come out of this blind. Fantastic.
Exactly.
Obviously,
should be like a blindfold match or something. He would have already been a bit more, familiar with the concept. But hey ho. Yeah, so just a bit of a smaller one, but just one of interest anyway for my final one of the week.
Well, my final one of the week is also a bit of a small one, but it ties into what we were talking about last week and a little bit interesting in that sense, really. So last week we mentioned about CM Punk, and we mentioned about essentially it looked like he wanted more money than AEW were willing to give. Now, Cody has been interviewed since this, and not about CM Punk, but during such time he's been asked about the CM Punk suggestions that were made, and has mentioned about the fact that the suggestion is that he wanted more money and he thinks he's worth tons and all this. And Cody very professionally has said, he wanted a lot of money and he is worth a lot of money. But then during this interview, and the bit that I wanted to mention and the bit that I find interesting is, and he did make it clear that he weren't specifically talking about Punk, he's talking about people in general, is that, and I'm sure he put it a lot better than I'm going to put it, but he was saying that, the Khan's got money, basically. The money isn't really the issue. The fact is, if the passion is there, the money is there. Like, they need to be passionate about what they do. And if they believe in what they want to do and what they want to put across, because he believes AEW is a place for artistic freedom, as it were. And if they are passionate about being in AEW and expressing that creativity when it comes to the wrestling industry, the money will be there. And he wasn't saying it specifically about CM Punk, but at the same time, CM Punk, didn't get the money he wanted. So it would kind of suggest that that was the bottom line, that he wasn't passionate about, he wanted a payday and he wasn't passionate about the actual wrestling industry. So I find that interesting because he's been very, very careful in what he said and very professional in what he said. But at the same time, that statement suggests that that's what fell down with Punk. I will stress that he did also say that the negotiations never got as far as it sounded with Punk. Like, it was more conversational than here's our offer, you know, and so on like that. It was at much earlier stages than that. But there must have been money thrown around for them to go, I'm not going to join you for that. But what do you make of this sort of suggest? And again, he's not said it specifically about Punk, but what do you make of this sort of comment?
I mean, sounds like Punk, doesn't it?
Does sound like Punk, doesn't it?
I mean,
especially he's cited it. Punk has said himself when he was burnt out with WWE that he wasn't going to go back to wrestling. Like, certainly not anytime soon. He seemed burnt out on the industry, so it makes a lot of sense that he wouldn't really be passionate about wrestling, because he didn't, like, he was, you know, he's grown up in wrestling, and I'm not trying to discredit him for that, but it seems like WWE had certainly massively, or his experience had certainly massively soured him on wrestling, which is why he was concentrating on something else, such as UFC, as well as that went.
Yeah, he doesn't give a fuck. Let's be honest, he doesn't give a fuck. He has spent his life busting his ass on the indies. He caught a big break in WWE. Was like, this is my moment. I'm going to become this megastar. Didn't happen. Went to UFC, fucking fell on his ass, and now he's come back and he's like, well, if I'm going to do it again, I at least want a big payday off the back of it. So he doesn't care. He's had enough, and I think we've all kind of had enough of him a bit.
I wish he'd have had enough, right? But I keep seeing things, and this might be the media, it might be Punk, I don't know, but I keep seeing things, like, quite recently after this, I've seen things saying like, oh, CM Punk has said the 2 wrestlers who he'd come back to WWE for, and I'm like, why is he still talking about who he'd come back to WWE to wrestle? Either you're going to come back or you're fucking not. We're kind of bored of it now. Like, do something.
Yeah.
But it's a strange one. But I think as much as Cody was being careful about how he said it, it seems like a very much a statement about Punk. Not just Punk, but about Punk.
Mm.
I do like the comment that he made that it's basically an artistic place, AEW, because I think you can see that in the creative freedom that they've got, in all fairness.
Yeah, I just I don't think they're missing out by not having them there, put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it'd do them. It might get some crowd attention. I don't even think it'd get the crowd attention that they once would have, but it might get some crowd attention. I mean, he's already returned to WWE backstage, so the return thing's kind of blown, isn't it?
Yeah. Hasn't that been like suspended now indefinitely? Oh
yeah, it's gone. It's done. They're not. They might continue with some sort of program, but it's not going to be WWE backstage in the form it was in. So that's that. That's all she wrote.
That's and that the way the cookie crumbles.
I love it because we're doing the news. That's good. And that's the Ringside Report.